Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to start on the Tamiya Grasshopper II build. I'll walk you through every step so you can put this together correctly. Today we're going to be working on step 1 all the way to step 5. Step 1 with Tamiya RC car kit is usually to charge the battery. If you plan on building this in one sitting and you have a trickle charger, go ahead and plug it in now. Alright, and then for the rest of the build, let's take a look here. On the left hand side here, Tamiya manuals usually tells you everything you need that corresponds with the step number. For step 2, we're going to need BA7, BA8, BA9, BA11, and BG4. So let's take a look. I think we're going to need this bag right here. You're also going to need the A parts bag. Also going to need this B tree and a screwdriver. The one thing you may not have, but I recommend that you do, is a set of ball bearings. So this one is made specifically for the Grasshopper and Grasshopper II. It contains all the ball bearings that you need for this kit to replace these plastic bushings and that one metal bearing right there. That's essential for performance as well as longevity for the kit. I'll leave a link in the description below. So let's start by taking things out of the bag. Alright, looks like we have everything. We have the gearbox housing right there. We have the rear shaft. 3 of these BA8 bearings. A BA9 bearing. This BA7 spacer. This BG4 counter gear. This BG2 large bevel gear, the shaft, and the little bottle of grease. I'm going to start right here. Going to push this rear shaft into the bevel gear, and then we're going to slide on the spacer. Going to set that down, and then here, this rear shaft is going to end up going through this hole right there. And it's going to need a BA8 bearing. Alright, and this gear is going to end up sitting like this. You just have to put it together. One bearing on this side of the gear. And one bearing on the outside of the gearbox housing. And the BA9 bearing on the other side of the gear. And the shaft itself. Then we're going to set that down in there. And make sure you hold on to that spacer, it doesn't fall out. And it's going to end up looking like this. Okay. They should both spin freely. Along the way, we should be applying grease to all the gears and the shafts. Now that I've dry fit everything and I know which order it goes, I'm going to do that right now. All right, feels terrific. I'm going to hold off on putting grease on the gears themselves right here and here until I know what else is going in, because if you put grease on here now, it's going to get messy. So let's hold off on that. All right, for step 3, we're going to need the BA6 screw, and we're going to need 2 of these BA8 bearings. And again, the BA8s are these white ones right here. BA6 should be this screw. Yep, that is correct. Need 2 of those bearings. And then I'm going to need this piece right here, and also B1 right there. Also need the other shaft. So I'm going to start by putting this onto the gearbox. And we're going to be blocking that hole right there with this cover. So one side will index, this hole will index to that stub right there. And then the other side we're going to put a screw on. This is kind of an access port to service the gearbox. If you wanted to grease it up a little bit, add some lubricant, you would just open up this port here, this little hole, and put the grease in. Now we have the other bevel gear. Just going to thread this through. One bearing on the inside, one bearing on the outside. This one is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to lubricate the shaft now. And step 3 is done. All right, for step 4, we're going to need this big gear, 3 of these small bevel gears, 4 of these tiny shafts that were inside this bearing bag. And we're going to need 4 of those BA5 screws. BA5 is just a little bit longer than the one we just used. This is going to get a little bit tricky, so let's take a look at what we need to do. We need to thread the shaft into each of the small bevel gears. Then we need to set it into the differential spur gear. And we got to hold everything together and then put together the 2 sides of the gearbox. So far this is probably going to be the hardest part of the build. Let's take a look at this gear right here. So you notice this side is smooth in the middle and this side has the notches and also on the outside. So we're going to put that side up and we still have to grease everything. And I'm going to just set this in like that. And then this last shaft is for the middle of that. Now I'm going to go back and put grease on all the gears. I'm going to set it down onto this side right here. I believe this is the right side. Let me double check. All right, it's going to be like that. And we're going to drop this on top of that gear. I moved the shaft into the middle of this gear. Now I'm going to thread this through. And if we did everything correctly, this gear should spin that one. And then later on, these should also spin as well. And this is going to act as the differential to spin the axle and the wheel. All right, now I need to put some grease on the outside of this gear right here. All right, that side is ready to go. Just going to line up this hole with that hole right there. And then the top of the shaft needs to line up with the middle of this gear. So this is probably the hardest part of the whole build. Okay, all right. If it sits together properly, this should spin. The other side should spin in the opposite direction. That's how a diff works. All right. Now we're going to screw the 2 sides of the gearbox housing together. Let's put this on. Make sure the screws are on tight and the rear axle is still spinning freely. All right, now we're done with step 4. For step 5, we're going to need the motor. This motor mount plate, C9. These 2 screws, BA2. These 2 nuts, BA10. Down here, we're going to need B2, BA1s, the BA4s, and C5 and C8. The C tree looks like this. So let's start over here. So if you can see this BA10, these 2 nuts will go on to the back of this plate right here. Let's see, let me put that on. Okay. And now, so this side is going to face outward, and this side is going to touch the motor. And these two holes are going to line up with these two right here. So let's set that up like that. And now we have to drive the two screws. Right, it should look like this. All right, make sure those two nuts are still there. Okay, set that down. Yep, I'm going to put it on this side. Is going to be the cover like this. I'll try to hold it. This notch on the motor mount is going to face the inside of the gearbox housing. All we have to do is line up the screws. One thing I did forget to show you is to put a little bit of grease on the pinion gear. Now we're going to install C5 and C8. C5 and C8 are the lower rear damper mounts. I have to put them on the correct side. Going to thread this through and make sure this hole lines up with that hole right there. Okay, now we're done with step 5, and it should look like this. All right, this video is going to end here. Today we started the Tamiya Grasshopper II kit, and we started from step 1 and we went all the way to step 5. We built the gearbox and the rear axle. So in the next video, we're going to start working on the electronics and the chassis. So thanks for watching this video. If you got anything out of it, please drop a like. Subscribe to see the other videos in this build series, as well as other car kits. I'll see you guys in the next one.